Munchies.
Welcome
Welcome to today's episode. Woo! We're so excited about today's episode and today's guest. It is definitely a step outside of some of the other episodes that we've hosted, and we are super excited to bring this guest on today.
Yeah, we've actually known Maritza a long time, many years, and not too long ago, she went through something so extraordinary, and we just thought it would be perfect for her to share her story. Her journey, and just what she's doing today. So, are you guys ready for a special treat?
Yay!
All right, let's go. Hey, Maritza.
Hey, girl.
I'm glad you're here.
Excited.
And I feel like I haven't talked to you in so long. I mean, we talk to each other online and here and there, but it's been so long that, I've actually seen you.
I know. I think it's been, maybe 6-7 years. I can't remember the way.
Yeah, when we worked together, and I was thinking about it, and I feel like we go way back to high school because all three of us were in high school at the same time.
Yep.
So recently you went through something so extraordinary, and your story is just amazing. And so I kind of want to just rewind from now to then. I remember actually being on Facebook, and it was around holiday time, if I am not wrong. And I was scrolling, and I started hearing all this "pray for Maritza" or hashtag Maritza strong. I'm like, what is going on? And so I'm scrolling. I see a post that your sister wrote, and I started bawling. So let our listeners and our viewers into what exactly I'm talking about.
So in December, I was diagnosed, December of 2019, diagnosed with AML, which is acute myeloid leukemia. So a cancer, a blood cancer in your blood and your bone marrow, and it attacks your red blood cells, white blood cells, and your platelet count. And I remember just in the fall of that year feeling sick throughout the months. I think starting in September, I just thought it was like a cold, maybe the flu. Then I would get better. And then going into November, I get sick again for a couple of weeks and just like, oh, I got the flu again or the cold. Didn't think anything of it. Come December, things got worse. I started feeling really tired. I wouldn't want to eat. I would throw up all the time. And then I would get the chills. And I would have my heat on like 80, 85. And I would still be cold all the time. And my kids are like, Mom, it's really hot in here. Like, we're sweating. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? This heat is not working. And I would remember taking showers, and I would have it all the way on the red, on hot. And it would still feel like lukewarm to me. And like, I remember times sitting in the shower, I looked down at my legs and I would see like bruises. And I'm like, where'd these bruises come from? And then I just associated with me being anemic, low iron, just cold, and bruises.
All the time.
Yeah, and then I started noticing little spots, like red, purple, brown spots all over my legs, and I'm like, what is that? So I just like wrote it off again. I'm like, oh, I don't know, whatever, the flu. And so I took a week off of work in December, and I went back on a Monday and went to my office, and I started throwing up again. And I get a phone call from my dad. And mind you, months before, my dad's like, Maritza, you need to go to the doctor. You need to go to the doctor. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. So that December, it was December 17th. And I remember this day because it was my sister-in-law's birthday. And I just go to work, and she worked with me. And I went to my office, and I immediately threw up. I was just throwing up. And I get a phone call from my dad. And he's like, hey, you back at work? I'm like, yeah, I'm at work, but I'm throwing up. And he's like, I'm about to pick you up right now. I'm taking you to the doctor. I'm like, no, I don't want to go. And he's like, I'm going to come there, and don't make me drag you out. And I'm like, oh, I have to go. So my dad picks me up that Monday, December 17th. I go to Steve's Medical here in Fairbanks, and I'm explaining to the doctors my symptoms. They take my blood pressure, sitting up, laying down, standing up. They take all this blood work. And then, I don't know, I'm there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. The doctor comes back in, and she's like, you have a low hematocrit, red blood cell count. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, it's 13. And at that time, I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But she was like, I need you to go to the emergency room right now. So I go out, and I tell my dad the results and what he said. At this point, we still have no idea what's going on, because all she told me is like, you need to go to the emergency room. Because
So are you getting nervous at this point? Or are you just like,
I
whatever,
was like,
let's just go?
I think I was getting a little bit nervous, because she said your count is 13. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but it must mean something if you're telling me I need to go right now to the emergency room. So I get there, and they already have all my information there. They check me in, and right away they're like, we need to give you a blood transfusion. And I'm like, what? Come to find out, they transfuse you like at 25 and under, and I'm at a 13 right now. And so they give me the blood transfusion. I'm in the emergency room. I think they gave me 2 that night. And then finally, after those, they admit me to FMH, Fairbanks Memorial. And right away, things start happening quickly. The oncologist comes up, and I'm like, an oncologist? Like, what are you here for? And
So they hadn't told you what they thought was going on at this point.
At this point, no, I'm still down in the emergency room, and they're just going over what it can be. And at that time, I didn't know they were sharing my blood work with the doctors and stuff like that. So once I did get admitted, and then the oncologist comes in with his nurse, and he's sitting there with my mom and my dad, explaining like, this is what I think it could be. And he says leukemia. And I just have this blank stare, like I don't think I didn't cry. I just like,
were you
what?
shocked? Were
I was
you
shocked. I was like, I felt like I didn't understand what he was saying. I'm like, did he really just say leukemia? I'm like, I know what that is. It's cancer. And so he quickly starts saying that we need to medevac you to Seattle. And that's going to happen in the next 30 to 45 minutes. So things start moving really quickly. And they have all these people coming in, filling out insurance, filling out stuff for the medevac. And then next thing I know, they come and they're like, they're about to will you out. And then my dad had gotten my oldest daughter, Ariana, there quickly to say bye to me, because I was like, oh, I'm leaving. Like, at this point, I still don't know what's going on. And then at that moment, when I seen my daughter and she gave me a hug, she started crying. That's when I broke down and realized, like, I'm about to leave. I didn't get to say goodbye to my other kids. I have 4 of them. Ariana, 14. Cameron is 6 at the time. And then I have a set of twins that are 3, who were 2 at the time. And I've never been away from them. So at that point, I broke down once they were wheeling me down, putting me in the ambulance. And it just went from there. I broke down and cried.
did your oldest daughter really know what was going on at this point?
At that time, no. She just, like, when she seen me, because I was in the hospital gown, and then they had me on the gurney ready to wheel me down, and she's sitting there just like, what's going on? Because my face was pale, because over those few months, things started changing. I started losing color. And she just looking at me, and she's just like, you're leaving. So it was a hard time. And then my mom and dad, like I watched my dad like hold tears, and I've never seen my dad cry. So that was a hard moment for me.
So, I mean, what was going through your head? Because I couldn't imagine having to leave my child without any explanation. I know you're really close with your siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Had you had a chance to call them? Did they know what was going on?
My parents had called them. I didn't pick up my phone at that time to talk to anybody. My dad was telling my siblings. I think my dad at one point gave me his phone. My brother Michael, my younger brother, was on the phone, and I heard him crying, and that broke my heart too. Like everybody's crying, and we still like don't know exactly what's going on. We have an idea. We just know that I'm leaving. And of course, my 6-year-old and the twins, they just think mommy's gone. Where'd mommy go? So that was a rough time. So at that point, they did put me on the medevac, and I was hysterically crying. And they were like, "Do you want something to help you go to sleep?" And at first I was like, no. And then once they strapped me in, because I had to lay down the whole time. I don't know if any of you guys been on a medevac, but lay down the whole time on the little gurney. They strapped me in, couldn't even move my arms. I was like, yeah, you need to give me something to fall asleep. So the next thing I knew, we landed in Seattle, and I was being wheeled into the hospital.
Did your dad get to come with you, or were you
My
literally by yourself?
mom initially came with me. She flew with me. We got settled at the hospital there, my first hospital there. And it was nighttime. So all they did was ask me a few questions, check me in. I fell asleep. And early the next morning, a physician assistant came in, and immediately they're like, we need to do a bone marrow biopsy. And I'm like, what's that? And he explained to me what it was. They were going to drill in my bone in my hip. And that was like excruciating pain. Like they give you some numbing medication, and they asked me if I wanted anything to calm my nerves. And I'm not into taking medicine. So I was like, no, I'm fine. So I got through it. And the oncologist there came in and looked at the blood work. And it was a few days after that, they got the bone marrow biopsy results back. And that's when they came back and said, you definitely have AML, acute myeloid leukemia. And it's a rapid cancer. It spreads really fast. They actually told me if I didn't listen to my dad, and if I didn't come in, I would have waited a week or two. It would have been really bad, way worse than what it was.
Thank God for Daddy, huh?
Yeah, I tell him all the time. I'm like, you're my guy.
You're like your guardian angel.
Yeah, like because he was persistent. Like over the months, he's like, Maritza, you need to go to the doctor. Me being stubborn, I'm like, I'm fine. Like I didn't want to call out of work. I just started a new job, and I'm like, I don't want to work.
Wow. So you're down there. You got the results back. So at that point, when they came in with the results, had you kind of had in the back of your mind like something is definitely wrong? I think it might be this, or when they told you, it was just total shock?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So when they came into the room, had you kind of already had an idea and accepted that something might be wrong? Or when they came in the room, was it a shock?
Yeah, I heard the words leukemia, AML. I immediately grabbed my phone once I was there in Seattle, and I started doing my own research before the doctors came in. And I was like looking at all the symptoms and everything. And I'm like, I had all these, and I just overlooked them, didn't. And so at that point, I was like, wow. Still in shock, though.
Yeah, that's the question I have. It's just what was that moment like when you heard them say that you had leukemia? Like what, if you remember, like how you felt or what was racing through your mind? Or
I immediately just thought about my kids. I'm like, is something going, like, I didn't know how bad it was at the time. So I'm like, am I going to leave my kids and not come back and be able to see my kids? So I was scared. I was petrified once they gave me all the details and then started going over what was about to happen next. I'm just like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do it.
Yeah. How soon was it before anyone in your family could get down there to you?
Well, my mom was with me, and then I think it was a couple weeks in that my dad and my stepmother came because we were just trying to figure out what I was going to do with my kids. My dad was here with my stepmother watching my kids while my mom was with me, but I also have my brother and my sister here. So my sister, a lot of the time, had 7 kids with her.
Oh my goodness.
So once my dad came with me, my mom, my stepmother, and my dad, we all made a plan. So my mom decided to come back to Fairbanks because she was able to work from home and be with my kids. So she stayed at my house with my kids, so we didn't have to move all their stuff, so they'd be in the comfort of their own home. And she just moved on in here. And my dad and my stepmother were down there being caregivers and taking care of all the logistics of everything going on.
Wow.
Gosh. So I know you're really close to your siblings.
Yeah.
And how I found out that you actually had cancer was the post that your sister Yolanda made.
Yeah.
And can you share how she took the news and when she was able to get down there and be with you?
She, like all of my siblings, I feel like at first took the news a lot worse than I did. My sister she's my best friend. Like when we were younger, we did not like each other. We did not. I was like, I'm supposed to be an only child. I'm the only girl. But as we grew into adults, we became close. So we talked every day, had dinner together all the time. So when she found out, I can't even explain how she felt, but I just know she was hurting. My older brother was in shock, and Michael, my younger brother, he's very sensitive. He probably killed me for saying that. We call him Crybaby Mike, but he was sad a lot of the time, and like every time I talked to him, he would bawl his eyes out.
Oh, how was it talking to your family knowing that they were hurting? Because like you always hear, when you go up to see so and so in the hospital, make sure you keep it together, you stay strong. How was it talking to your family and knowing that crying, they're crying because they love you and they're scared? How was that? What did that do for you mentally? Just knowing that they're so hurt.
It took a toll on me, and I'm a person that most of the times I don't have a problem showing my feelings, but with this situation, I held a lot back in front of them, and I feel like I still do. Like I look at them and I'm like, I'm fine. Like I wouldn't let them know that I'm scared. I'm terrified. I would just let them know I'm fine just so I could reassure them and hopefully they would be okay too, even though I was feeling like I am scared. But I wouldn't want to say that out loud. I never said it out loud to them. Still to this day, I don't think I have. I think whenever they watch this will be the first time that they hear me say I'm scared. I'm still scared because things could happen.
Oh wow. You would post these pictures of yourself on Facebook and Snapchat, and you were always smiling. Even though you were going through something incredibly tough, you were always just so inspiring, like I got this, but you were scared the entire time.
Scared the entire time, but I also feel like I'm a strong person.
Yes.
And I do got it. I feel like I do got it, but there are days, and they had people come in and talk to me. Like there are going to be days where you're feeling really sad, depressed, or just feeling like you want to give up, but don't. And I would have those days, and I would just talk to myself and be like, you got this. And then I have everybody, all my friends, everybody on Facebook, social media, just sending me messages, sending me care packages. And Courtney, you were the very first one who sent me something in the mail, and I was so excited to receive everything in that box. And so over the past year, I've had so many people helping me through it.
Oh my gosh. So take us through your treatment. So you got your diagnosis,
Yeah.
mom and dad are arranging everything, you got the kids settled. So now I'm assuming you get ready to start treatment.
Yes, it happened quickly. As soon as they got the results from the bone marrow, they came in and they told me exactly what chemo regimen I was going to do. If I remember correctly, they called it a G-clam. It was a mixture of 3 different medications, 3 chemos that I would get over a period of, I think it was 7 days. And they told me like all the side effects that would happen, like feeling nauseous, throwing up, obviously the hair loss and like skin rashes and everything. They just told me everything that would possibly happen. So I got that first chemo treatment, and surprisingly, I did pretty well. I was surprised because, you know, you see movies and shows and you see people just like,
It looks bad.
it looks
There's
horrible.
nothing on your body.
And I did have some really bad days, but this first regimen I did pretty well. I think I got sick maybe 3 times. Other than that, I was fine. And they did another bone marrow biopsy after that first regimen, and they said it's gone. They said they don't have any sign of the cancer anymore. So I was like, okay, this is good.
That's
So,
good news.
yeah. So I was like, what's the next step? And they were like, we have to wait because when you do the chemo, it wipes out your system completely. It took all of my neutrophils, my blood counts down to nothing. And then they have to try and rebuild themselves. And for this first chemo regimen, I did really well. My blood came up really well on their own. I didn't really need any transfusions at that time because my blood counts were coming back really well. And so after that, they wanted to do a second round of chemo after my blood came to a certain point, and it was different chemo medications. And we did that, I think maybe a month later. And my blood counts at that point weren't doing the same thing. They weren't coming back on their own. They were coming back slower, and I needed more blood transfusions and platelet transfusions after the second one. And they couldn't tell me why there was a big difference. So that kind of scared me. And then after that, they suggested I do a stem cell transplant, or some people call it a bone marrow transplant, but a stem cell transplant. So the next step was to find a donor. And so it would either have to be, hopefully one of my siblings were a match, or I have to have a match somewhere in the database. So they sent kits out to all my siblings to get their blood work done and sent to Seattle. And come to find out, I had 2 matches. Both of my brothers were matches. So that was exciting news. I didn't have to wait for a donor. My brother Michael ended up being my donor, and he was just a bit closer of a match than my brother Robert. So that's why we went with him. The doctors actually said he was almost an identical match. So the match, the better, the less side effects, they say. So we went with Michael, and we were ready to do the transplant, but then COVID hit.
So before you go into the whole transplant process, when your brother found out that he was almost an identical match, what did he say? What was his reaction?
Oh, he was so cocky because all of my siblings were hoping they were my match. Like, my sister was devastated. She was nowhere near a match at all. So she was just so sad. And my oldest brother, Robert, was hoping and praying he was my match because they all wanted to do it for me. They all wanted to make sure I was okay and be my donor. But when Michael found out that he was the one, he was excited.
Oh, wow. So, and you also mentioned chemotherapy that you were doing. So I know a lot of people, even myself, you know, I've seen it on TV. I've heard some people going through it, but we really don't understand chemotherapy and the process. So can you really explain, like, were you getting infusions or was it a shot? I know there's the oral chemotherapy as well.
So mine were infusions. So what they ended up doing was putting something called a PICC line in my arm, and they had to like weave this this line through my veins all the way up to close to my heart. That way they didn't have to continue poking me with the needle every day, getting bruises. I know I sent you a video. You probably see bruises all over my arm. That was before my PICC line was in. So that thing was a lifesaver. So they would hook it's like these bags. I don't know if you've seen like saline bags, but kind of like that, but with the chemo medication in there and different ones. I would have to sit there for like maybe one took 5 hours a day, and then I would have to do the next one that took maybe 2 hours. And then the last one in my first regimen took only like 15. I had to do this every day at a certain time. So it was just infusions inside of the arm.
Oh my God. How long was that? Like, how long did you have to sit?
My first one, was a 5-hour bag. So I'd be in the hospital bed, just good thing I was able to bring a fire stick. I hooked a fire stick up to the hospital TV.
Okay, had to hook that room up. I know that's right.
I did. I hooked the room up. I brought my own blankets. I didn't want the hospital blankets. I just needed to be comfortable because they're looking to be here for a while. Like, I was living in hospital and hotel for about 6 months at this point, like in and out. So yeah, so the whole day, it took the whole day to get through one day of chemo. It took about maybe 8
Mm.
and it was draining. It made me feel tired because it was just, it's wiping my system out.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Maritza, I'm wondering, I mean, it just sounds exhausting, and I'm wondering what, I can assume family was one of the reasons that you kept going, but what, on those days where you were just terribly exhausted and didn't want to push forward, like what kept you going?
Literally, I'm sure everybody says this who has kids, but it's my kids. Like, I'm all about my kids. I would talk to them. There was not one day through this whole year and a half that I did not talk to them. Even when I ended up in the ICU for a couple days, I managed to grab my phone and I had to call them.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was my 6-year-old at the time, Cameron. She definitely was a main factor in me pushing through because she asked me a question, and it's coming from a 6-year-old. And she's like, "Mommy, are you going to die?" That broke my heart. And it's like, as a mother, my instinct was like, no, baby, mommy's going to be fine. I got this. And then, but in my back of my head, I'm like, am I really going to be okay? Because you never know. But me being a mom and wanting to try and reassure her, like, mommy's going to be fine. And she's always like, when are you coming home? Ask the doctors, can you come home? So Cameron would break my heart, but she would always write me letters, even when I was gone, and just take a picture of herself showing me the letter she wrote me. So she helped me push through a lot.
That's beautiful.
How old is your oldest daughter now?
She is 14 right now. She'll be 15 in about 6 months. So we're planning her quince. She wants a quince.
Oh, okay. She has gotten so big. I remember when you first had her, and so she's at an age where she really understands what's going on. So how are conversations with her?
They were a lot harder, I think, because I feel like she tried to hold back and not talk about it. I actually had to try and bring it out of her to talk to me about how she was feeling. Like, I feel like she was pulling back on me a lot. Like, there was one point, my dad was able to bring the twins and Cameron to see me before COVID hit, and she decided not to come. And that kind of like broke my heart a little bit, but I kind of understood. She didn't want to see me in that state. So she, the reason or excuse that she wanted to be there and didn't want to miss any school. So it was a lot harder talking to her, but I think now that I'm home and I'm able to explain to her like what I went through and wanted to know how she was feeling, she's getting better with talking to me more.
Oh, wow.
I think she just was more scared than she wanted to let on, because it's always been Ariana and I.
And it's almost like she was trying to be strong and not be
She
emotional the same way you were trying to be strong and not cry in front of your siblings and your parents.
Yeah, there were days where she would write me and tell me like she wants me to come home so bad, she misses me, and I'm like, I got to get through this. I got to get home. And I'm like, I missed so many milestones with the twins, and I'm like, I got to get home.
Oh my gosh. And this was all, you said this was all before COVID.
This was before COVID that my dad was able to bring Cameron and the twins to visit me for a while. Yeah.
And so this was back in March when all the COVID stuff started going on. So after that, I'm assuming all of your visits had to stop and you were by yourself?
I was, let's see, when COVID started, yes, I was with my stepmother and my dad, but my dad would fly back and forth kind of before COVID got really bad. And then when it was time for me to go into get ready for the transplant, we decided, okay, my stepmom's going to come back and my mom's going to come back with me, because at this point we decided, okay, because I was switching hospitals. I was at Swedish Hill Hospital, then I needed to go to the University of Washington Hospital at this point.
Mhm.
So at this point, my dad's like, okay, we're not doing hotels anymore. I'm getting you an apartment. So my dad got mom and I an apartment that was actually for cancer patients. So everything was sterilized, clean, nice apartment that was in walking distance of the hospital. And that also had a shuttle to take us back and forth. So we didn't have to get a car. And so my mom came back with me and she stayed with me through the rest of the process with the transplant.
Were you more nervous now that your immune system is just completely wiped? Were you more nervous than you typically would have been when all this COVID stuff started?
I was, and they told me to take precautions. Like, I didn't go anywhere. I stayed in the apartment unless I had to go to the doctor. Like, they told me I couldn't go in the grocery store. I couldn't go anywhere. I was able to walk, so because I needed to get some exercise. So, because one of the side effects is your joints and everything just getting stiff and hurting. So I did need to walk. So on days where I would walk back and forth to my appointments, but I was confined to the house the whole time unless I was in an appointment. And they were giving me a COVID test once a week, every week for like 4 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So before we started tonight, typically, Christina and I will, send pictures back and forth just to kind of decide what we're gonna use.
Mhm.
And there was one picture that you sent me, and my eyes just instantly welled up with tears. Because I was like, Christina, you remember Maritza? And she was like, yeah, the one with the long, beautiful black curly hair. And she's like, I wonder, if I should ask, how she's feeling, but I'll let Christina,
Oh yeah, I'm
with
up
that.
for questions. You don't have to hold back with me.
Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, so I think I'm just on this huge trip right now about society and like what is defined as beauty, which we all know lives up to European standards. I'm not for them and not about them. And so just in like being on my own journey of like finding what's beautiful to me, and redefining my references of beauty, like how are you doing with all of that, the pressures of what, losing your gorgeous locks that you had, and like how are you, I just know as a woman there's a lot that goes along with that for so many of us. Just kind of like tell us a little bit about what that journey is like right now.
There were times where it was a little hard because not only did I lose my hair, but I went through skin changes as well. Um, Before I got on this, I contemplated like, okay, am I gonna glam up, put on makeup, put my wig on because I got my first wig,
I saw it, girl. It was cute.
and I thought about it. I was like, if I'm gonna continue to be transparent and show exactly like, what this has done to me, like even physically, emotionally, and everything, I was like, let me just get on like this, like wash my face, moisturize, and just like as you see, I have bag, well, a bag under the side, but this is actually a black eye, and I got this black eye back in July
Oh my
when
gosh.
to visit home. Once they put the transplants on hold, because when COVID hit, they put transplants on hold, and they didn't know if I was going to be able to do the transplant like in a month or 6 months. So I asked my doctor, I was like, well, can I go home? I don't want to sit here if I'm not doing anything. So they allowed me to come home, and I got this black eye from my youngest daughter. She was walking around playing with her princess wand, and she tapped me. It was like a light tap right here in my eye. And within minutes, it turned puffy. I felt it turn puffy. It got hot. It was black, blue, purple. I think I actually sent you a picture of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened within seconds. So I called my doctor and I'm like, hey, this is what's happening. What's going on? Like, it happened fast. And so they asked me to come in. I got my blood drawn, and it was because my platelets were low. My normal platelets are, I think, 150,000 to 450,000. Mine dropped down to 3,000.
Oh,
Yeah. So and they infuse you when they are 15 and under, and I dropped to 3. So I had to go in and get a transfusion and everything. So that's why this is looking like that. So I struggle with how I'm looking, and but my sister, my brothers, everybody's always reassuring me, oh, you're beautiful. And I'm like, Have to say that. But and then there's other things that go along with it. Like people see on the movies, cancer patients, they lose a lot of weight and they're looking skinny and frail. But what you don't know is, like, I did lose when I was there about 15 to 20 pounds, but I'm gaining it back. And that's the side effects of all the medication I'm on is weight gain, weight loss, weight gain. It goes up and down. So I'm like up and down 10, 15 pounds all the time. And also puffiness, like my face is puffy, my hands get puffy, my legs, they swell up. Like I look down and it's like, I look like I'm 300-400 pounds. Like it's that bad.
Is it painful when your legs
It's
start?
painful. Yeah. Like, especially during Christmas time. I usually don't go anywhere. I try to stay in the house as much as possible, but every now and then they did tell me I'm able to get out. I can go to the store and stuff like that. So during Christmas time, I was out at the store all day running errands because I have good and I have bad days. Like I throw up all the time. It's ridiculous that I would stop and it just comes on. But some days I wake up and I feel great and I'm like, okay, I can get stuff done today. So during Christmas time, I was out, and then at the end of the day, I looked down and it was painful to walk. Like my sister thought she was gonna have to go get one of those motor carts to get me back to the car. I was walking like I was like 9 months pregnant, just waddling. So it's all kinds of things going on with my body right now that make me feel like, that make me struggle with how I'm looking. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I don't care what anybody thinks. Like I am going through something so so it's hard to explain what it is. It's just I have a lot going on. I don't care if you think I look good today.
Oh my gosh.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Good
that's
for you.
beautiful. And I see your pictures that you post, and I think like, gosh, she is so brave. And I kind of, kick myself because sometimes we'll get in the mirror and we'll complain about the most trivial things, you know what I mean? Where there is someone who's going through something a lot worse.
You
And
know,
so when you were, go ahead.
no, I was doing that too before I got sick or diagnosed. I'd look in the mirror and just complain, stupidest thing.
So
Now
what was what motivated you to post that first picture? I remember when you posted, it was either a video or a picture, and it was the first time you were showing everybody you with no hair. I remember you had the hair in your hand, and then a couple minutes later you showed us the actual picture. What was going through your head before you hit the post button?
I was actually thinking, do I really want to post this? Because I would look at myself and I was like, I look crazy with no hair. I was like, I hate this. Like, I was born with more hair than I have now. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do this. Because you never know. People could be going through the same thing you're going through. Other people have different diseases that could cause hair loss. And I was just like, let me be brave. Let me just post this. And it was a positive. I didn't get any negative feedback, which was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it was terrifying to post that for the first time because, like, I am used to my curly hair and I miss it.
Mm.
But I'm embracing the hair I have now. I look a lot like my son now.
You guys are twins. You guys are twins.
That's what people are saying.
Was it hard for your children to see you without your hair?
When they seen me with no hair for the first time, I think it was my daughter, my youngest daughter. She's like, "Mommy, where's your hair?" Like she tries to brush my scalp.
Oh.
She's like, "All done." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." But they look at me. I think Cameron, my 6-year-old, now 7, I think she didn't know how to react. Like she laughed. And I was like, she's just a kid. She's like,
Know better, yeah.
and I was like, you're, yeah. And my oldest daughter, she's like, you're still pretty, Mom.
Oh.
Oh. So your transplant. So I remember you said you were waiting for that. So when were you finally able to get the was it you said the stem cell transplant?
Stem cell transplant, yeah. So I came home in the end of May, and they wanted me to get another round of chemo while I was here in Fairbanks, just because they didn't want any chances of it coming back before I got the transplant.
Mm-hmm.
So I was here in May, and then I think it was the end of June they called me and said, we're ready for you.
Were
come
you
back.
excited? Were you excited? Were you nervous?
Nervous, sad. Like I was feeling everything. I was excited to finally get it done. I was sad that I would have to leave my kids again. But I was like, I gotta get this done. So I flew back with my mother, I believe. Yes, she was there for the transplant, and then my dad also came as well. And we got everything set up. There was like this whole thing I had to do again. I had to go through like pulmonary function test. I had to get a CAT scan, MRI, echocardiogram. I had to get everything done. I had to go to the dentist. I had to
Why
get
did you have to go to the dentist?
because some of the side effects of certain chemos can mess with your teeth, cause teeth decay. So I had to go to the dentist, make sure everything was good, make sure there's no cavities or anything before, because they were going to give me another round of chemo that was going to wipe my system completely out more than the other chemos did in order to get me ready for that.
Were you nervous about like you were gonna have to go through this again?
Yeah, no, I was like, again? And I'm like, all right. So, and then like I even had to go to the gynecologist. I had to get a breast exam. Like they had to do everything because they just want to make sure your body can handle what it's about to go through again. So I don't think I've ever mentioned this or told anybody other than my family. Like they tell you I'm prone now to secondary cancers. So like breast cancer, colon cancer, cervical cancer. So before I got the transplant, they had found precancerous cells on my cervix. So I don't think I've ever mentioned this to anybody yet. So they had to determine whether they wanted to take care of that first or if I was okay enough to go through this next round of chemo and the transplant. So they determined, okay, we're going to fix this leukemia first. They gave me another round of intensive chemotherapy and to get me ready for that transplant. And then I went through the transplant. After the transplant, I had to go through another procedure before I came home to get those precancerous cells removed from my cervix. So that's just something else I have to keep an eye on every year to make sure it does not turn into full-blown cancer.
Does cancer run in your family, Maritza?
My grandfather on my mother's side actually had leukemia as well. It was a different type of leukemia, but they did some type of blood test because I was worried, like, could my kids get this? Yeah. But they did kind of blood test and they told me the type I had is not genetic. They couldn't tell me how I got it or anything. They actually told me it's really rare for me to have it because it's more common in younger kids or in older elders, like 65 and older.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
so they were like, well, you're pretty healthy other than your cancer. And I'm like, yeah. So, and then they determined that I had an extra chromosome, trisomy 8, one of the 23 chromosomes that we have. Number 8, I had an extra copy of it. They don't know how that happened. And I'm like, what is that? So I start doing my own research and, along with talking to doctors, and they don't know how it happened. It just something in my DNA just copied itself more than it needed to. And it's some kind of disease, and they said it could be fatal. And I'm like, what? Like that, like hearing those words scare me. So with all the blood tests after my chemo and everything, it's gone. There's no sign of it. So normal again.
Yes. So that was a lot that you had to prepare. What did your brother have to do to prepare to be a donor?
So he had to, do some kind of diet. I don't know exactly what it entailed, but I know he had to change his diet for about a month. I think they gave him some type of medication to take. And then when he flew back to Seattle to get hooked up and give the cells, days before that, he would have to go in to get shots, blood booster shots. They were at the highest level they needed to be. And so that's all he really had to do to get ready for that, just change his diet, make sure he had enough calcium, and just get those blood booster shots. And then the day he gave his donation, it only took a day, took a few hours, I think. They hooked him up, and it was like giving a blood donation, basically. And the side effects for him were nausea, headache, and he was feeling it for a week. But after that, he was okay.
Wow.
He gave you the most precious gift of all. And I saw the video when you came home and you surprised them, saw the videos and the pictures of him at the hospital, you ready to give you the transplant. And you mentioned how important he is to you and how hard he took it. What's one thing that you haven't told your brother that you want to know?
I literally, I owe him like my life. Like, he gave me life back, and I did tell him that, because I got him a special gift, and I did tell him that, like, he is the reason I'm living right now.
Oh,
Did he cry?
He did, and I actually tell you that
you want to
video.
put him on blast, Christina.
I think I have a video up somewhere. I don't think I sent it to you. I probably should. It's a video of him opening the gift and what I said, and he was crying.
Oh, send it, girl. Not because we want to make fun of you, Mike. But I think the relation. I didn't know. I knew you guys were close because we worked together for a while at the jewelry store back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize how close of a bond that you and your siblings had until I saw this whole journey unfold online. Like, man, you guys are tight. And it's just beautiful. It's good to see.
It is.
So what's going? Are you in remission? Are you?
I am in remission.
Whoop whoop!
Yay!
Right now, and they say, let's see, after 2 years, if you are still clear after 2 years, I should be good in order to not get it again. But I am at risk for relapse, though.
Were you excited? Like, what went through your head when you got that paper that said all clear?
I was so excited. I seen the words "in remission," and I was just like, okay.
Is it me?
Yeah, like, I knew I was in remission before the transplant because they wanted to be in remission, but I had to get through the transplant and see if my body would actually accept Michael's cells, because they tell you that my body could reject them or his cells will reject my body, which they didn't. So far so good. My blood cells are recovering nicely after the transplant. I did have a hard time. I had about a week after the transplant, though. They tell you the side effects you can have, and one of them is something called oral mucositis. And I think it was like a week or two after the transplant, I started to feel it. It's like inflammation in your mouth and in your throat, and you can get sores, and it's like hard to swallow, hard to eat. There was one point I couldn't even drink water, and they had to. I stopped eating. They had to hook me up to IV nutrition, like, because I couldn't drink water. It hurt so bad. And there was one day, like, I literally thought I was not going to make it, because I woke up one morning. It was like 6 a.m. and my mom always comes to the hospital between 7 and 8 a.m. But it was 6 a.m. and I wake up. The nurses usually come in to do their shift change around 7, so it was early. I woke up and my throat hurt more than usual that morning. So I got up and I was walking to the sink, and I had a coughing fit, and I could not catch my breath after that. Like, I stood there and couldn't catch my breath. It was hard for me to even get back to my bed to hit that call button to let them know, like, I could not breathe. Like, I felt like I was about to take my last breath. So I finally got to the bed and I hit that call button, and I managed to get the words out. When she answered me, I was like, I can't breathe. And then next thing I know, I had like 10 or 11 people rushing to my room, and I'm having a coughing fit, but as I'm coughing, I can't breathe. And so I start spitting up everywhere. And finally, when they get the oxygen in my nose, I start to feel a little better. But that was the day I thought it was it. Like, I'd never felt that way ever. So that's the day they took me to the ICU, and I'm listening to them talk, like whether they need to put me on a ventilator or not. And I'm at this point, I'm just scared because even with the oxygen in, it was so hard to breathe. And it took, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes for me to be breathing normally. So they did take me down to the ICU. I didn't know where my phone was to even like text anybody. And I hear the nurse say, "We're going to call your mom." So I didn't get to see my mom. I think it was for 2 or 3 days because they wouldn't let her in the ICU because of COVID. So that was like the rough point through this whole journey.
Oh my good. So when you're coughing and you're hitting the call button and you're thinking you're going to die, everyone always shares like you see a light or your light flashes, but before your eyes, or I start thinking about my childhood or kids. What was, aside from trying to breathe, the obvious, were those things going through your head, or was it just right now I'm trying to survive?
Like a light or anything, but those things were going through my head because like in my mind I'm like, oh my goodness, this is it. Like this is like, I really did feel like it was about to be my last breath. That's how bad I could not breathe. And I'm like, I haven't talked to my kids today. Like I don't know at that point other than like I feel like I was in distress. Like I was so hurt.
Oh my goodness. So now that you're in remission, I'm assuming you're back home, right? You're in Alaska?
I am back home in Fairbanks. I've been back. I made it my mission to allow them to, let me come home on Halloween. I was doing well enough after that. I asked them, could I come home a little bit early? Because after you get a transplant, they say you need 3 months. They want to monitor you there for 3 months. And I was doing pretty well. And I had asked them, like, if I'm doing well at this point, you think you can let me go home? And I explained to them who my doctor was here in Fairbanks, and they all knew who my doctor was because he had trained with them down up in Seattle. And they're like, oh, we know him. He's a great doctor. We feel comfortable releasing you and letting you go back home. So I was able to surprise my kids this time coming home on Halloween. So I came home October 31st, and I've been home since. I've had a lot of appointments since then. I'm doing good so far.
So what are these, just follow-ups? What are these appointments for, even though you're in remission?
They're follow-ups, and also I have other things going on. I have to get my blood checked once a week just to make sure my counts are still going where they need to go. And last week I started what they call phlebotomy. They're removing blood from me now because of all the blood transfusions that I've had. My body has accrued so much iron, and our bodies don't get rid of iron. So I have so much iron in my body, they need to start slowly getting rid of it by taking some blood out, because if I have like a big iron overload, it can mess with all my other organs. So we're keeping an eye on that. And then like I have other appointments, like I have an echocardiogram coming up. They want to check my heart because I do have all this excess swelling in my legs. They want to make sure my heart is able to keep up with what my body's trying to do. They're going to make sure there's nothing blocking it. So there's just so many side effects that they tell you that you could possibly have. And it's kind of strange and kind of scary because like you go through chemo and a transplant and you're like, oh, I'm going to be better. This is supposed to make my body better. But they tell you that you can get diabetes, like I said, weight gain, all these skin issues like graft versus host disease. If my body is not taking Michael's cells, I could get like severe burns on my skin out of nowhere, but they don't think that's an issue for me now. Like it can happen up to a year, and I have a little bit to go. So I still have to look out for these signs of graft versus host. It could happen on your skin, inside your intestines, anything. So they're monitoring a lot of stuff right now.
So when you said you were scared, still scared, is it
Yeah.
the side effects or is it relapse?
Both. Like the side, more so relapse. That's what I'm most scared to hear. And I don't think I'll know anything about that until I go to my year checkup in Seattle. I think and do another bone marrow biopsy just to check. And once I get that done, and once they say no cancer, I think I'll feel a little bit more relieved. But all these side effects, yeah, they're taking a toll on me still. Like, I still feel tired a lot of the time. Like I said, I still throw up a lot. I swell all the time, and I just want my energy back. So I'm trying to do some things. Since I'm not allowed to really go anywhere, I try to do home workouts. I'm trying to have better nutrition, and it's kind of hard for me because I don't feel hungry a lot of the time, but I know I need to eat. So I do a lot of protein shakes.
Oh my. So you've had to make these huge adjustments. Is life after being away from your family and going through this, is it significantly different, or you get back into your groove?
As soon as I came back, it was just my instinct to go into mommy mode, full mommy mode. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to, because we had a routine before all this happened, because I'm here by myself with these 4 kids, and I get them up 5:30, 6 a.m. every morning, get myself ready for work, then ready for school, off to school, twins to my dad's house, and I get to work. And I came home and I'm like, I'm ready to get back on my routine. Although I don't have to go to work, I still, got to get up, get ready, cook your breakfast. And I try to do that, and I try so hard to do that, but there are days where I'm like, I'm doing too much. And that was hard for me physically being here with my kids. It's hard for me to still let go and ask for that help. And I know I have that help. My mom, like I said, lives next door. My dad is maybe 7 minutes away. My sister's 5 minutes away. Michael's here. Like, they all offer to take the twins if I need to rest. The kids are doing the online school. So during the week, my dad comes, picks them up at 8 a.m. And some days I'll be like, no, I'll keep the twins. They can stay with me. And other days he's like, no, let me take them and you rest. So they're at my dad's during the week because all their homeschool stuff is set up there. And so I'm able to rest. And it was hard for me to do that because I was like, no, I can do homeschool. I got it. He was like, no, Maritza, you need to rest. My dad has no problem. He's like, you're looking really bad today. And he doesn't mean it in a bad way. He's like, you're looking
Dads
really
are just honest. They're just so honest. My dad's like that too.
He's like, you need to go to sleep and you need to rest. And every day, my dad is texting me. My mom is calling, texting, did you eat today? Did you get enough rest? Are you feeling okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. And I have to learn on days that I'm not fine, I need to say, I need help. And I struggle with that because I'm always like, I'm fine.
Maritza, you're just so inspiring, and you're so young and have gone through so much. I remember being in the jokes, we would always joke like, Maritza, you're older than me, you know what I mean? But we're really the same age, 30 something.
Oh man.
And we have a lot of women that watch and listen to our podcast. And I know you've been so inspiring to Christina herself. What is a message, like what is something that you want to tell our viewers and our listeners?
Specifically about this or just in general?
In general, about life, about 2021.
Well, going into 2021, I was going to tell everybody that they need to really take care of themselves, listen to their bodies, because anything can happen. And like with the way things are going now, we don't know what's going to happen, I feel. And you just need to listen to yourself, listen to that gut feeling. If something's not right, you need to go get it checked out. And then into what Christina was saying earlier, like, you don't let anybody define what beauty is for you, because everybody is beautiful in their own way, and it's ridiculous how others make you feel about yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I wanna wrap this up by saying we are just so humbled and honored that you chose our platform to share your story. I've learned so much from you. I'm inspired. I got a little emotional, but your story is just so incredibly beautiful. And thank you, Maritza. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty, well, tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Maritza Dion, I believe are my names. If not, you could just type in Maritza, and I'm sure I'll pop up somewhere.
So if you have any questions for Maritza, if you just give her a shout out, show her some love. She's on Facebook, she is on Instagram. And again, Maritza, we thank you so much. Your story is so beautiful and you're so incredibly brave.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my goodness.
Wow. I know my heart is just like, it's just all tight, like right here. I was just
trying not to cry because she's just so inspiring and just
so beautiful. I mean, I can't imagine like going through something of that magnitude away from your comfort zone, the majority of your family members. I just could not imagine. And she's so resilient.
Yes.
Better
than resilient. I mean, and she just carries it all with such grace and just
yeah. Wow.
I think you just need to go ahead and just end it right there. Let everybody
just sit with that the way that we're sitting with it.
Man, what a powerful woman. Powerful woman. Well, all right, you guys. Until next week, thank you guys. You can find us on Instagram, Sheforia. Send us an email, sheforiapodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget, we have audio versions of our shows on Spotify, Podbean, Amazon Music, Google Play, Pandora. I mean, run it out. We're everywhere. If you want to find us again, thank you so much, Maritza. We love you. We thank you.
Thank you.